Okay, so we're diving deep into democratic backsliding today.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, and I think you gave me a really interesting mix of sources to work with this time.
Okay, great.
We've got, let's see,
Yeah.
we've got that Freedom House report, the latest one on like global trends, and then
Hmm.
some pretty hard-hitting, I thought, journalism from The Atlantic,
Yeah.
and then even an in-depth analysis of Hungary from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. So
Right.
you're clearly going for like a 360-degree understanding of this whole phenomenon.
Well, yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it's a multifaceted issue, and it's something that I think, we need
Yeah.
to understand from a variety of angles.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think, one of the things that I find so fascinating about this whole concept of democratic backsliding is that it really challenges that assumption that, democracy is this sort of rock solid, unshakable system.
Right.
It's kind of
Like it's the end of history, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
We've arrived.
Like
Right.
we've figured it all out.
Yeah.
But it turns out it's more like this constant
Mm-hmm.
work in progress. It's vulnerable to this kind of a subtle erosion.
Yeah.
And it's
The backsliding.
backsliding. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like, you think about like a coastline slowly being chipped away by the tide.
Right, exactly. And I think what's so striking from some of these sources is how it often does unfold
Mm-hmm.
under the radar,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're not talking about
Right.
tanks in the street. We're not talking about a military coup necessarily,
Well, exactly.
but rather this
It's much more
in series of
organized.
seemingly minor changes,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
That over time add up to something far,
It's death by 1,000 cuts.
yeah, more sinister.
Yeah, and I think historically,
Yeah.
we've seen democratic breakdowns through these like dramatic events, right?
Yeah,
Coups or blatant election rigging.
right.
But what we're witnessing now is it's much more insidious. It's this gradual hollowing out of democratic institutions and norms from within, and often through perfectly legal means.
So it's not about breaking the law, but it's about
Right.
exploiting loopholes and bending the rule
Exactly.
to concentrate power.
Precisely. And the sources highlight a range of tactics that are being employed. You see things like packing courts with loyalists, gerrymandering electoral districts,
Right.
even weaponizing, the very laws that are designed to protect free speech, to silence dissent.
That Freedom House report had some pretty
Yes.
disturbing examples of that.
It's really concerning. And I think,
Yeah.
the Hungary case study that you mentioned from the Carnegie Endowment, I mean,
Yeah, I thought that was a really
that really brings this to life.
compelling, example. It's a
It's a textbook example,
Oh.
unfortunately, but
it's a shame that it's a textbook example, but it's very
it's
illustrative. Yeah,
It is, and it paints this chilling picture of how a seemingly stable democracy
right.
can be manipulated over time.
Yeah, and so under Orban, right,
Yes,
we've seen this systematic dismantling of checks and balances.
exactly. Yeah.
And they give the example like of the judiciary being undermined. Judges are forced into early retirement.
Yeah.
They're replaced with party loyalists.
Yeah.
Constitutional courts are stripped of their powers.
So it's a masterclass.
Like, it's chilling how
in how to dismantle a democracy
effective it is. Yeah.
without resorting to outright authoritarianism.
Right. And what I think is so alarming, right, is that this isn't just happening
Yeah.
in far-off countries.
Right. Exactly.
Like that Atlantic article
Yeah.
on the U.S. called How to Lose a Democracy
Right.
really hit home for me.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it argues that, even in America, the supposed bastion of,
A beacon of democracy.
that similar warning signs are flashing. So
The parallels are
it made me think, like,
striking.
okay, maybe we're not as exceptional as we think we are.
Yeah, and the article really talks about this sort of
Mm-hmm.
this partisan tit for tat,
Yeah.
where both Democrats and Republicans are increasingly prioritizing winning at all costs,
Right.
even if it means
Yeah.
bending or breaking democratic norms.
It's like a race to the bottom, where
Yeah.
each side feels justified in using whatever
Yeah.
tactics are available, and then
Yeah.
the ultimate loser is the
The system is
democratic system itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And this brings us to a crucial point, I think,
Okay.
which is the role of polarization.
Okay.
The research consistently shows that when societies become deeply divided, it creates fertile ground for backsliding.
Because people are so focused on us versus them,
Yes.
that they lose sight of those
Exactly.
shared democratic principles that should be binding everyone together.
Precisely. And the sources delve into how this happens.
Right.
It's not just about disagreeing on policies.
Okay.
It's about demonizing your opponents,
Right.
questioning their motives,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately eroding trust in the very idea
Yeah.
of a shared political community.
And that's where I thought the psychology of polarization gets really interesting.
Yeah.
One of the sources even mentions how, like, polarized media environments
Right. Yeah.
with their echo chambers and filter bubbles
Yes.
really exacerbate this problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're bombarded with information,
Exactly.
confirming our biases,
Right.
which makes us more susceptible to manipulation
Yes.
and less likely to, engage in good faith debate.
It's like a feedback loop,
Uh-huh.
It just amplifies those existing divisions.
Yeah.
And the research suggests that, this can make people
Mhm.
more willing to accept or even justify
Right.
anti-democratic behavior
Mm-hmm.
if it benefits their side.
If it owns the libs or if it
Exactly.
triggers the cons,
Yeah.
whatever it might be.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's not just about, like, the power-hungry leaders. It's also about
Yeah.
citizens making choices,
Right.
often unconsciously,
Yeah.
that
Right.
contribute to this erosion
That's a crucial point.
of democratic norms.
Yeah, and it raises the question, if polarization is fueling backsliding,
Uh-huh.
how do we break this cycle?
Right.
And the sources suggest,
Yeah.
promoting media literacy,
Okay.
encouraging critical thinking,
Mhm.
fostering dialogue across ideological divides. These are sort of
Sounds like good
essential first steps.
places to start, yeah.
Yeah.
But then that leads us to, I think, another layer of this complex puzzle,
Yeah.
which is the role of public opinion,
Okay.
right? So how much do citizens' attitudes
Mm-hmm.
and behaviors actually influence
Right.
the trajectory of backsliding?
Well, the research paints a somewhat nuanced picture here.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's fascinating. So it seems like while people generally dislike politicians who undermine democracy,
Oh, yeah.
their commitment to those principles can waver a little bit
Okay.
when faced with,
Trade-offs.
trade-offs. Exactly.
Right.
So, for example,
Hmm.
they might be willing to overlook some anti-democratic behavior.
Right.
Okay,
If it means,
if it means their party wins.
yeah, their party wins.
Oh,
Or their preferred
we
policy.
preferred policies get enacted.
Yeah, it's like a question of priorities.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
people value democracy, but maybe not
Right.
always above
Not above all else.
everything else.
Yeah, and the studies show that this is especially true
Uh-huh.
for strong partisans.
Okay.
They tend to prioritize party loyalty
Mm-hmm.
over concerns about democratic erosion.
Even if it means justifying
Yeah, even if it means justifying some
some questionable tactics.
questionable tactics. Exactly.
It's a little disheartening, isn't it?
It is a bit disheartening. And,
It's like those experiments that were mentioned in one of the sources
right.
where researchers presented people with these, like, hypothetical scenarios.
Yeah.
And it turned out that people were
Yeah.
surprisingly willing to sacrifice
Mhm.
democratic principles for things like policy gains or partisan loyalty.
It's a sobering reminder that,
Yeah.
backsliding isn't just about these evil masterminds
Right.
plotting to seize power.
Right.
It's often much more subtle,
Yeah.
incremental process
Right.
with ordinary citizens sometimes unwittingly playing a part.
So it's like, what can we do?
Right.
Is there any way to counteract this tendency
Mm-hmm.
to prioritize the short-term gains over the long-term
Right.
health of democracy?
Well, the sources offer a few,
Yeah.
glimmers of hope here.
Okay, good.
One intriguing finding
Yeah.
is that in countries with multi-party systems,
Right.
voters often have more nuanced choices.
Okay.
They're not always forced to pick between, a candidate who's blatantly undemocratic
Right.
but supports their policies,
Uh-huh.
and one who's staunchly democratic
Right.
but holds opposing views.
So having more options could actually help to
It's a possibility.
strengthen democratic values.
Yeah, it's a possibility worth considering.
Okay.
The research suggests that when voters have a wider range of choices,
Mm-hmm.
they're less likely to feel forced
Okay.
into making those kinds of compromises
Interesting.
on democratic principles.
So that brings us back to the U.S. case, right?
Yeah,
Where
we only have two.
that how to lose a democracy piece
Right.
really argues that the two-party system
Yeah.
might actually be exacerbating the problem.
But yeah, the article highlights how this winner-take-all system
Okay.
creates incentives for both parties to engage in this sort of democratic brinkmanship.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Pushing the boundaries further and further to secure victory.
To secure victory. And the piece specifically cites gerrymandering.
Yes.
It's a prime example of
Absolutely, yeah.
this dynamic.
Both Democrats and Republicans
It cuts both ways.
have been guilty of manipulating electoral maps to their advantage.
Right.
You know, diluting the power of opposing votes, entrenching their own.
And the source point out that this isn't just a theoretical concern.
Right.
This is having real-world consequences.
Exactly.
And they cite the example of that. Redistricting map that Democrats in New York tried to push through.
Right.
It was ultimately deemed unconstitutional.
Yeah, and what's striking about that case is the justification offered by the Democrats.
Right.
They argued that because Republicans had engaged in similar gerrymandering in other states, that they had no choice.
Right, to fight fire with fire.
But to do the same to remain competitive.
So they're essentially admitting to undermining democratic norms.
Yeah.
But justifying it as a necessary evil to combat the other side's bad behavior.
It perfectly illustrates how this partisan tit-for-tat can erode democratic standards over time.
But gerrymandering's just one piece of the puzzle.
One piece, exactly.
Right. The sources highlight other tactics being used to manipulate elections and tilt the playing field.
Absolutely. We've seen efforts to restrict voting access.
Right.
Often disproportionately impacting minority communities.
Yeah. The Freedom House report had a lot on that.
We've seen attempts to suppress voter turnout through, misinformation campaigns and intimidation tactics.
Yeah.
And we've seen increasingly brazen attempts to just cast doubt on the legitimacy of elections themselves.
It's like a playbook straight out of the authoritarian's handbook.
Yeah.
But the sources emphasize that these tactics aren't always coordinated or centrally directed.
Right. They often emerge organically from within.
Emerge organically.
The political system.
Yeah, from within the system.
So it's not always this top-down phenomenon.
Right.
It can also be driven by these bottom-up pressures, by politicians responding to the demands of their base, or exploiting existing societal divisions. Which makes it even more insidious because it's harder to pinpoint and address.
It's harder to fight,
Exactly, and it highlights the need for this multifaceted approach to combating backsliding. It's not just about strengthening institutions or reforming electoral systems. It's also about fostering a culture of democratic values, promoting civic engagement, holding leaders accountable.
Yeah, and that's where I think the sources really start to converge on a common theme, which is this importance of vigilance.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One of the key takeaways from all of these sources.
Whether we're talking about Hungary, Poland, or even the U.S., is that democratic backsliding thrives on apathy and inattention.
Because if people aren't paying attention, it's easier for those in power to slowly chip away at those democratic foundations.
Exactly. And by the time people realize what's happening, it might be too late to...
Great course. Put the genie back in the bottle.
Exactly. So it's crucial for citizens to stay informed. Engage in critical thinking. And actively participate in the democratic process.
Which is why we're doing this deep dive.
Exactly.
To arm ourselves with the knowledge and insights we need to, recognize the warning signs and take action.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, good.
And while we've covered a lot of ground here, from specific case studies to broader trends in public opinion, the role of polarization. There's one source we haven't touched on yet that I think really expands the scope of this discussion.
You're talking about the excerpt from Democratic Decline, a global phenomenon, even in wealthy nations.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really suggests that backsliding isn't just a problem for struggling democracies. It's impacting even the most established and seemingly stable ones.
It is kind of a sobering thought.
It is,
that democratic decline is this global phenomenon impacting even those countries we typically think of as beacons of freedom.
Right, those model democracies.
And stability.
Yeah, the ones that we sort of hold up as examples to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And yet they're facing these challenges too.
And that article, it highlights some of those underlying factors.
Yeah, some of the root causes, I guess.
Driving this trend. So one of the things they talk about is economic inequality.
Yes, that's a major one.
As a major contributor.
Yeah, and when that gap between the rich and the poor widens, you know, it can fuel resentment, erode social cohesion, and create fertile ground for populist leaders who exploit those grievances.
Like that old saying, a house divided?
A house divided cannot stand.
Cannot stand, yeah.
And it seems like social polarization, which we talked about, plays a role here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The research suggests that when societies become fragmented along.
Whether it's ideological lines, religious lines, ethnic lines, it becomes easier for those in power to exploit those divisions.
Yeah, to play one group off against another.
Exactly.
And ultimately undermine those.
Yeah, those democratic norms and institutions.
Democratic norms, and then the article also points to a decline in trust.
Yes. This is a big one.
In institutions is a key factor.
Yeah, it's almost like this vicious cycle, you know? As trust erodes, people become more disillusioned with democracy. Yeah. Which makes them more susceptible.
To the appeals of...
To those appeals of...
Populist or
authoritarian leaders who promise, you know...
Simple solutions.
Easy solutions to complex problems, and they often prey on that.
Yeah, they prey on people's...
That lack of trust.
Fears and anxieties.
Exactly.
So it's not just about trust in government, but it's trust in...
Right, it's about trust in the media, trust in the judiciary, trust in each other.
Yeah.
And when those bonds of trust fray, it weakens the very fabric of democracy.
So where do we go from here?
Right. Right, that's the big question.
Like, if democratic backsliding is this global trend, impacting even the most seemingly stable nations, what hope is there?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a hopeless situation.
Okay.
I think the sources we've examined today offer some potential paths forward. For one, they highlight the importance of strengthening democratic institutions.
Okay, so concrete things like...
concrete things...
Ensuring judicial independence.
Yeah, ensuring judicial independence.
Promoting free and fair elections.
Promoting free and fair elections.
Protecting the rights of minorities.
Protecting the rights of minorities.
Safeguarding a free press.
Safeguarding freedom of the press.
So those core...
Yeah, it's about building those checks and balances that prevent any one person or group from accumulating too much power.
Too much power, so it's not just about the institution.
Yeah, it's also about...
It's about fostering that culture.
Fostering a culture.
Of democracy.
Of democracy, yeah.
So what does that look like?
Well, it means promoting civic education.
Okay.
Encouraging critical thinking. And facilitating open and honest dialogue.
Across ideological divides.
Exactly.
And one of the sources really emphasizes the importance of supporting a free and independent press.
Absolutely. I mean, a free press is essential.
Right.
For holding power to account, exposing corruption, informing citizens about the decisions being made in their name.
It's that old idea that sunlight
is the best disinfectant.
But it seems like social media has kind of complicated this a bit.
Complicated this equation, yeah.
Yeah, one of the sources even argues that the rise of online disinformation and echo chambers is exacerbating polarization and making it easier for those in power to manipulate public opinion.
And so their solution for that is...
Well, they talk about the need for media literacy.
Okay, so...
Teaching people how to
think critically.
Critically evaluate information.
About the information.
And identify bias.
That they're...
Recognize misinformation.
And consuming online.
Exactly. It's about empowering citizens to be...
informed consumers of news and information.
But all this talk about, you know, institutions and civic education.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people it can feel a bit...
Yeah, it can feel very abstract.
Like, what can we as individuals...
Right, what can we actually do the difference?
Yeah, is there even any point in trying?
Right.
And I believe there is.
Okay, good.
I think one of the most powerful takeaways from these sources is that individual actions, however small, can have a ripple effect.
Okay.
You know, it starts with awareness.
Okay.
recognizing the warning signs of backsliding,
Okay.
and speaking out against it.
So we need to pay attention, educate ourselves,
Yeah.
and engage in those uncomfortable conversations.
Sometimes those difficult conversations.
Even when it's easier to just...
Right, to stay silent.
Stay silent.
Exactly. But beyond speaking out,
Yeah.
we can support organizations that promote democratic values. We can vote in every election.
Right. Hold our elected officials accountable.
It's about taking ownership.
Yeah, taking ownership.
Of our democracy.
Of our democracy, and recognizing that, it's not a spectator sport.
Right.
It's a participatory process.
Well said.
And remember,
yeah,
this deep dive has only scratched the surface.
Of course.
There's a wealth of information out there.
Right.
And I encourage you to continue exploring this topic.
Okay.
Seek out diverse perspectives and challenge your own assumptions.
Because the more we learn,
the
better equipped we'll be.
The better equipped we'll be.
To protect and strengthen those foundations of democracy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Both at home and around the world.
Both here at home and around the world. Yeah.
Well, that's a powerful thought to end on, I think.
It is.
So thank you for taking this deep dive with me and sharing your...
It's been a pleasure.
...expertise. It's been enlightening, to say the least.
The pleasure was all mine. Keep asking those tough questions.
Okay.
Keep learning.
I'll do my best.
And keep engaging.
Okay.
That's how we safeguard democracy